Ruth, welcome back to our show.
Thank you, Nancy. It's good to be here again.
Well, the last time we really got very heavy when we were talking about thought. And it got to a place where it felt so disturbing to begin to think, well, are we creating all these difficulties in our life? Are we making these things happen because we have bad thoughts? And that is a very disturbing kind of thing. So maybe help us understand that.
That's a very good point, actually, because we can misunderstand it, and then we are blaming ourselves or blaming others. And there's no blame here. There's just new knowledge that's coming into our lives at this point. You know, that even medicine now and science are discovering that there's a direct relationship between our feelings, our emotions, and our thoughts, and what happens in our experience, including physical symptoms. So this is wonderful knowledge. It's liberating, actually, but it's hard to understand at first, and we mustn't make the mistake of thinking that you don't need doctors anymore. For heaven's sakes, that would be ridiculous. But we're suggesting that if you have time, if you have the interest, that there's another way to approach your problems, whether they be physical symptoms or emotional problems or behavioral aspects of your life, anything that is troublesome to you, that we approach it with two intelligent questions. What is the meaning of what seems to be, and what is what really is? And when we ask the question, what is the meaning of what seems to be, the meaning refers to the mental equivalent of that particular problem. So that's what we're looking for. What is the equivalent? What is the thought that is manifesting itself in this particular form? And that's something we can't figure out. So we're not suggesting that you sit down and say, well, now let me figure this out. You can't figure it out. But you can be receptive to it if you're interested in understanding it.
Yeah, one of the things we want to do is we think, well, what if I just change the way I'm thinking? Maybe if I just think positive thoughts, or if I just think affirmations, then I'll be okay. But that's not what you're talking about either.
No, it's not exchanging one thought for another thought. It's shifting of our attention to an entirely different direction, shifting it, in fact, to divine reality, to God, to omniactive love intelligence, and seeing what is the divine idea here that is needed that would heal this particular problem. But we don't do that until we've asked the first intelligent question. What is the meaning of what seems to be? So last time we talked about a very dramatic example of a healing that had taken place. But let's talk about just ordinary things, like what about a cold? Somebody gets a cold. Well, the other day I was talking with an individual, and he was saying, oh, I'm still sick. I've had the cold for over a week. And I knew that his family had been visiting him. And I said, did you have any problems with your children? And he said, actually, I did. And I said, did you feel left out? He said, that's exactly what I felt. And in understanding that that was the thought that was manifesting itself in the form of a cold was very helpful to him, because then he didn't have to suffer from the cold anymore. In fact, the cold is not really something that is not real. It seems to be real. It's an experience. It seems to be real. But it's really a thought. So just getting used to the idea that everything is a thought is what is so difficult for all of us.
So understanding that that's a thought, and that he had this thought that they're leaving me out. So then what?
Then you come to the second intelligent question, because first of all, he had to recognize that that was true. And once he recognized, yes, that is the thought, because he was interested in asking that question, he recognized that, yes, that's exactly what it was. It seems so simple, actually, to hear it, but to somebody who isn't aware of it, then it's profoundly revealing to them. And then once you have that answer, then you can say, okay, what is the spiritual counterfact to that thought? And we brought to his attention the fact that he's never alone, that he's never left out. We're never left out of divine reality. We're always at one with divine reality. It just seems like on this human level we have these experiences of feeling left out. So in elevating his awareness to a higher level of understanding, a healing can take place. And indeed, that's what happened.
That his cold just disappeared because the symptoms were not really real.
They were not really real. It was a thought.
So are you saying that the cold was a communication wanting to remind him that he really is always part of a greater whole?
Yes.
That in a way he had forgotten that, and in forgetting that, he was going to start to live in a diminished way.
And that is what we all do. We're not aware of reality all the time. We're not aware of being spiritual beings. So that we fall into this habit of thinking the way human beings think and the way we've all been educated to think. So none of us have been taught that our thoughts manifest in the form of a variety of things, good and bad, beneficial and harmful to us. And that's what metapsychiatry has been devoting so much of its time to. Dr. Hora did in his lifetime, to trying to understand the various things. Here's another example. Somebody suffering from envy and is aware that they're envying people and doesn't know how to get out of it. How do you overcome envy? Everybody has envious experiences. And metapsychiatry says, yeah, this comes from comparison thinking. That when you compare yourself to somebody else, then you're always going to feel that you haven't got what they have got. We define envy as wanting to have what someone else has. So how can you get that for yourself? Well, it's not for you. It's for someone else at that point.
But how can you just stop being envious?
Well, you can't, as I said. You
Yeah.
have to understand that it comes from comparing yourself to someone else. So if you would like to understand that, you have to see yourself in a different way, and it's from a spiritual context. That you do not need to envy anyone, because each one of us is a unique individual, each of us with gifts and talents that are given to us individually, and that you have everything you already need to make your life good. So how can you compare yourself to anybody else? It's like two snowflakes. You can't compare two snowflakes. So what's the use of comparing?
So I might think with that, I think, well, but if I had what they had, then I'd be happy.
Yes.
Kind of thing. Or I need what they have, and they somehow are smarter or richer or better or more beautiful than I am.
Yes.
And then I feel bad.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So
that's normal.
that's normal.
Right? But it doesn't have to be. It's only if you compare yourself to other people and do not know who you really are that you
But how can I stop that? How can I stop comparing myself? I mean, so you're saying, so you say, okay, that's a false thought. And I might say, okay, but there it is, still there.
That's an invalid thought because it's leading to a problem, right?
Right. I don't like the things that happen when I feel envious.
Exactly.
It's really disturbing.
Of course it is. But only if you understand that you already have been given a God-given gift of your own uniqueness, your own individuality, and that there are no two people alike. So how can you go around envying somebody else something when you haven't even discovered perhaps what you have already within you? You have all the resources available to you. They just need to be cultivated.
So it's really freeing, right? It's recognizing again what's really true, which is there's nothing to be envious about.
Exactly.
But it's not so much happening on a thought level. It's happening by being aware, by becoming aware, paying attention to what's really true, you would say, which is my divine essence.
That's the healing solution. That's the spiritual healing solution. On the human level, there is envy. But when we see ourselves from a spiritual perspective, then the envy dissolves because there is no way of comparing yourself to anyone else. Each one of us is unique.
And we all have a unique journey
Yes.
that we're here living.
Exactly. So the more we understand that, the more the envy dissolves.
So we can't change the way I think. I can't say, okay, I'm envious, let me stop being envious. That's not going to help.
It doesn't work, does it?
No.
No.
It doesn't work. It
So
just makes it worse.
It just, yes, well, it goes underground, so to speak.
Right, and will come out in other ways.
In another form. Exactly.
But I can be interested in understanding what is really true, right? What's happening on another level.
Who you are. It all gets back to who you are. How you see yourself. If you see yourself as a human being, then you're going to have experiences of suffering, pleasure and pain. You know, things are good, things are bad. It's dualistic. But from the spiritual perspective, it's non-dual. Everything is good. We are created perfect. We already have everything needed to unfold, for our lives to unfold in a perfect way. But we don't know that. We have to be taught that. And we have to be interested in it. We have to pay attention to it.
Now, here's an example. I had someone on my show recently who was a quadriplegic. And when she was 3 years old, she was hit by a car, right? A very tragic experience for herself, for her grandmother, for her mother, right? And so she lives in a wheelchair and she has a respirator. And she was on the show, and she's actually a very happy person, which is quite interesting.
Yes.
And her grandmother talked about forgiving the person who had hit her with the car. And on the other hand, her mother was living in hatred and upsetness, right, of this whole experience, not able to forgive, really in a painful way. So someone might look at that and say, well, it was a terrible tragedy. What happened? What was the thought of a 3-year-old that would cause this kind of experience, right? Is that what we're saying?
No. There's no cause here.
Okay, good. Let's
no
really
cause.
understand that for people.
There is a lack of awareness. That's what we have to confront. There's a lack of knowledge, a lack of awareness. Accidents do happen. Bad things do happen. And no one causes them. But there is a lack of understanding, and they are the manifestation of the lack of understanding. So if you see it in that way, then you can't blame anybody. You can't blame yourself. You can't blame anyone else. As a matter of fact, there's a lovely story in the Bible that speaks to that when Jesus was asked about the man who was born blind. Was this man who was born blind, did he do this, or was it his parents? And Christ said to him, no, it is for the glory of God. So how do we understand such a story like that?
What does that mean?
Yeah, it's that exactly what you're saying. It's so that we can see that there is no one who causes anything, but that bad things seem to happen. They always have a meaning, and we can learn from the meaning, and we can transcend it. So we have to practice forgiveness. We have to give up blaming other people, blaming ourselves, blaming anybody, and actually coming to that point of compassion that we spoke about earlier, where we understand there is a lack of understanding. No one is to blame for anything.
And so to relate to this young woman who's quadriplegic, who's in a wheelchair, she's still a whole being. There's nothing wrong with her in a spiritual sense. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, as you said, she's full of joy.
Yes, she is.
So maybe she's discovered joy through the seeming adversity that has taken place, for which no one is to blame, but it is an opportunity for her to develop spiritually. Perhaps she might not have developed so spiritually had this not happened. Not that one would wish that on anyone, but the world is full of pain and suffering. But as we say in metapsychiatry, it is inevitable but not necessary. Inevitable but not necessary. There is always a way to transcend the suffering, to understand the meaning of it, and to come to an awareness of spiritual reality where we find our joy and where we are free and where all things work together for good, and we just see love all around us all the time. We see it everywhere. Love and intelligence at work.
One of the things that was so liberating for me in studying metapsychiatry was to get out of the sense that, well, I have to do things right. I have to take the right vitamins or eat the right food or do the right exercise. I was kind of looking for the right regimen to be healthy, or the right thoughts. It's always been a kind of a manipulative way, or an operational way, you might say. What do I have to do? What's the formula for health, for rightness? And really, with what you're talking about, that's not it at all, because I'm right, everything's right now.
Yes, it already is.
It already is.
And if you are aware of the fact that you are governed, your consciousness is governed by divine reality instead of by other values of the world, then the right ideas will always reveal themselves to you. You will be led to the right nutritional program. You will be led to the information you need for exercise or whatever else it is, because we do take care of the temple of the soul, and that is loving intelligent.
So it's not to ignore the body or to disregard the things that are human about us.
No, we don't ignore anything, actually. We seek to see everything from a spiritual perspective, and that's what changes everything.
So say more about that in terms of, so what's the spiritual perspective of this body that we all have?
Well, if you're interested in the body, then you're probably going to suffer a lot of problems in the body. But if you're interested in developing the quality of your consciousness, if you're interested in the spiritual values and seeking to understand more and more of the love intelligence that's already working and in your life and your affairs, you're going to see it more and more, and the body will just become healthier. So you don't have to be so focused on the body. In fact, that's a great distraction.
So what you're saying to exercise or eat well or be attentive.
Yes.
But not over concerned.
Not preoccupied with it, because that can create a lot of problems, as it does with young people today who are anorexic or who are suffering all kinds of depressions and despair. What's life worth now? Is this all there is? And there's a lot of anxiety about that, a lot of angst about that, because we have a very good lifestyle in this country, generally speaking. And people are saying, a lot of young people are saying, is that all there is?
Right. It's like when we identify our sense of well-being with how we look or with our physical shape.
Yes.
That leads to suffering.
That's right. That can lead to suffering, right, if we become overly focused in it. But here's another example of how our thoughts impact on our experiences. For example, anger. There's a lot of anger in the world today. There's rage. There's violence everywhere. And anger is a very simple thing to understand. It's defined in metapsychiatry as an emotional reaction to not getting what we want or getting what we don't want. Now, that's a very simple concept, and people can't believe that actually that could be at the root of the violence that's going on around the world, of terrorism, but that's what it is. It's wanting something that you can't get and having this emotional reaction, this strong reaction to it. Anger, rage, road rage. What's going on with road rage? Well, there's a driver who isn't getting what he wants.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you heal something like that? Well, you would first of all, of course, have to be interested in healing it. But if you could understand that anger has that simple meaning to it. It's like a kid, a 2-year-old with a temper tantrum, after all, except that it's an adult who thinks that it's okay to act out in an angry fashion.
Well, and we have this idea, I think, especially in this culture, it seems, that the most important thing is to have life the way we want it.
Exactly. So as long as you think that way, you're going to run into problems.
Tremendous problems. You're going to be continuously frustrated because we never get what, you never completely get what you want.
No, and anyway, getting what you want isn't the purpose of our life.
And when we get what we want, we ended up being dissatisfied anyway because there's still some other kind of craving.
Something else will take its place, exactly. So this shows you that in the world, everything is always changing.
So what's really true is shifting from the world is here to be what I want it to be and for me to mold, to have what I want and to be able to take what I want from it, to I'm really here to be a positive presence to the world, to be a beneficial presence to what's happening here as kind of an element or an emissary, an aspect of divine consciousness.
Yes, yes. That's a qualitatively different way of seeing and being in the world, isn't it?
Right. And that you're saying that as we adopt that, when we recognize that that's what's true, our life actually goes into harmony.
That's right.
And that the disharmony that we experience in our life in the form of anger and frustration and other problems is really from seeing our purpose in life in a distorted way.
Yes, you could say it that way. It's actually all about ego. The ego is something that we all have to contend with. And by seeing ourselves as persons, then we are under the control of all of these ideas that we want and what we don't want. But if we see ourselves as a spiritual being, then our orientation in life is totally different. We're here for God. We're here to manifest, as you said before, that which is of God. So Pegel, freedom, harmony, joy, goodness, and to see intelligence and love working out in the world everywhere, because it is. But we have to look for it.
Well, maybe you could say a little bit more about that word manifest. I mean, I think that's maybe overused or misunderstood.
Misunderstood.
Because again, we want to move towards, our mind automatically goes to, I have to make this happen. or I have to create something.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about what I'm doing. And so talk about what it is to manifest.
To
or how
manifest,
you mean it.
yes, what it means in metapsychiatry is that it's clearly stated. For example, if you're angry, or let's say your behavior, let's say you kick something, that's a very clear statement about a thought. I'm angry. I'm not getting what I want, so I'm going to kick something. Most people don't look at it that way. But if we consider everything as a thought, as we keep going back to this whole new paradigm in which we're looking at life, that everything is a thought. So behavior is a thought, feelings are thoughts. This is another thing that's interesting, by the way, that most people feel that the feelings are beyond their ability to change. And
Right,
actually,
they just happen. We can't control them.
Exactly. And in fact, we can't. We can't change them. We think we try to, but we can't. But if we understand that that feeling is a byproduct of a thought, then something can change.
That I feel hurt or I feel angry as a result of some thought I'm having about not getting what I want.
Exactly.
Right? That
exactly.
someone doesn't love me the way I want, or someone is not giving me what I want, or I'm not getting it somehow.
Yes, yeah. And here's another one that's been very helpful to people. Metapsychiatry defines depression in a completely different way. It says that depression is the loss, either perceived or real, of a person, place, thing, or idea which you consider to be essential for your happiness and well-being. Now, when people come to me with depression, and I reveal this to them, it's amazing to them because they have never thought of it that way. It's a feeling, after all. They've been taught that it's a biochemical imbalance. They've been taught that they have to take a certain medication and that maybe they'll be depressed for the rest of their lives. I mean, that's a very difficult problem to deal with.
Right, they've been taught that it's organic, that it's genetic, right? That
Exactly.
they've inherited it.
They've inherited all these different things, but the new awareness says, no, 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 it's a thought. If you can look at it as a thought, which does not mean that you can't go and get medication, so let's be clear about that.
That's right, medications can be helpful or temporary, and it's part of the process.
But if you're ready to consider the idea that it's a thought, and you try to see, what is it that I've lost? Have I lost a person, a place, a thing, or an idea? Either real or perceived, because it may only be perceived. Then, if you can see that that's something you consider to be essential for your happiness and well-being, you say, oh my goodness, yes, I have lost a thought. I've lost the idea that life should da-da-da-da, whatever it is, or I've lost my child. Well, you haven't really lost your child, but you think you have lost your child. And the child is off on a new life, and they don't pay much attention to mom or dad anymore, you know. So that's a perceived loss, but that doesn't mean it's a real loss. In fact, you can never really lose anything.
But even if their child has died, you could say, you're talking about the depression, that could be real. I really did lose someone precious to me, someone who was important to me, someone I loved. But what you're saying, yes, but it's not essential to your well-being.
Exactly. And actually, I had that loss. I lost a daughter when she was 26. And that's the worst thing a parent can ever think of happening to them, but it happened. And I was so grateful for metapsychiatry at that time because I understood the meaning of her loss, and I was able to be healed. Dr. Hoare helped me through that period. And I was amazed at how quickly I was able to be restored to Pegel. And because I came to understand, or I knew at that point, that actually we're never born and we're never dying. We're always in the standpoint of perfection. We always are alive. We're immortal. We're immortal, actually.
We are all part of this eternal process of life.
That's right. So when you really see yourself in a broader context, never born, never dying, one of the definitions we have is that birth is the appearance of an appearance, and death is the disappearance of an appearance. So we're talking about the physical appearance, but that denies consciousness, which is what we really are. Consciousness is not visible, it's not tangible, but it is knowable. We can all be aware of it.
So you would never blame someone or withhold someone that opportunity, that experience of loss of a child, but they can move through that and don't have to live the rest of their life depressed.
Exactly.
That's the
point.
good news that you're
Yes.
talking about.
Yes,
right?
and that child is always with you, so that you don't lose the child. You perceive that you have lost the child until you realize that, no, their qualities, the things that we love about that individual, are still with us. They're very much alive.
Right.
But we're not suffering because we understand that they are alive.
And that our well-being can still be intact.
That's right.
That loss is not permanent. We're not damaged.
That's right.
Completely forever
Our
from
life,
that experience.
Yes, the good of our life is not taken away from us simply because someone has passed on.
Right. Well, on that note, Ruth, this show is over.
Oh, my.
And this flew by. So again, thank you for sitting here and talking us through all these incredibly deep points.
Well, it has been a joy again. Thank you, Nancy.
And thank you for listening, and we'll see you again next time. Bye for now.